sense impressions, and they're actually just symbols. They're not real objects. They're just the impressions that those objects make on our senses. So, people talk about objective reality, all this. There is no such thing as objective reality. Objective reality is completely, so-called objective reality, is completely relative to our sense impressions. Is that flue open all the way?
The wind in the same direction.
That has to blaze up really hot. You have to make it really hot so that it, yeah. Yeah. Get some small wood, put it on there so it blazes up. It's going to go out after a while. You got to get some small pieces and keep it going like that.
Just put the small pieces around the gaps?
In back, like in back and in the gaps, yeah. Okay. And keep it blazing. Otherwise, it's not going to be hot enough to counteract the wind. Where was that? So when we see these other people, they're actually just sense impressions. And how we see them or what we see in them is dependent on how we look at them. You see? So it's a matter of our consciousness. Our consciousness is going to be different depending on what proportion of our consciousness we invest in our sense impressions and what proportion is invested in consciousness itself. So the best thing is just to chant all the time. But then, of course, you can't do any preaching, you can't do any service. You're just going to be chanting. But that's the ideal existence. I mean, that's really wonderful. It's a wonderful way to live. And I highly recommend it. If you get a chance in this life to take some time and just chant, take the opportunity because you won't regret it. It's very, very nice. Any other comments?
Yes. Comment from guest. What if I get more angry with myself than with others? Is it suppression?
Well, if you know you're angry, it's not suppression, is it? Doesn't matter who you get angry at. What the dangerous thing is saying, "Oh, I'm not angry, you son of a..." That's the dangerous thing. If you're angry at whoever and you're not ready to admit it, you're in denial. You have to bring the feelings and other things that you have invested in, that you have projected yourself in, you have to bring them out of denial into awareness, have full consciousness of them, and then take ownership of them and admit to yourself that I am angry, I am this, I am that. That's what identification, that's how identification shows up in the verbal expression. That I am angry, I am this, I'm that. Then as soon as we say that, we can say, well, is that really myself? And of course the answer is, the fact that we can be conscious of it means that it's different from ourselves. Is it material? Is it part of the mind? Is it part of the body? Is it something outside that we see through the senses? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, it's not part of the self. And so at that point we can distance ourselves from it, and we can take back our identification with it and say, okay, well, anger is happening, but this anger is in my mind and it's because I'm identified with whatever that is, and like that. So if you're angry with yourself, then you have to ask yourself, why am I angry with myself? Did I do something that I didn't want to do, or not do something that I wanted to do, or You know, what's the reason? And then go on from there to resolve the situation. At least if you're angry at yourself, you know, you have control over the situation. If you're angry at what somebody else is doing, you have no control over what they're going to do. You have to really be detached. You had a comment, Peter?
So it seems to me that in order to distance yourself, you know, first you have to use your intelligence to distinguish. First you have to recognize, okay, I am angry. Then you have to realize, and then, okay, in order to distance yourself from it, the problem I see is because we have so many material impressions in our mind. It prevents us from being able to distance ourselves from it.
Yes. That's why
Right.
chanting helps. Even if you're in this state of identification or whatever it is, if you start chanting, this will immediately shed light into all these things. But you still have to know. You still have to know that, okay, I'm identified, or okay, I'm projecting, or okay, I'm thinking that this is myself, but it's not really myself. That knowledge comes from devotional service. It comes from the scriptures. It comes from Bhagavad-gītā. Bhagavad-gītā in the 2nd chapter says that the self is only the soul, pure consciousness. Everything else is part of the body. The mind, the intelligence, the false ego, these are all material. What's spiritual? Our consciousness, our life energy, our desire, intention, emotion, personality, individuality. These things are all spiritual. The problem is we apply them to the wrong things, and things that are not really ourself, and we identify with them.
See, sorry, I think people have misunderstood terms on every one of those words you said.
I agree with you.
Consciousness, personality, individuality, all those words you said
Absolutely.
are like...
Because they have been defined in Western culture or Western psychology in terms of material things. If you say somebody has a nice personality, it means they smile a lot and they know how to speak nicely or something like that. But what we mean when we say personality is the fact that every living entity is a person. And when we say false personality, we mean the body, the mind, the intelligence, the false ego that the living entity inhabits, but the living entity is different from the body and the mind and the intelligence and the false ego. These are basic fundamental points of Vedic spiritual life. So we're advocating that people learn this knowledge and then apply it in there. And so what does it mean to apply it? And that's what we're going over now. Christian, you have
En Spanish. Bueno, yo quiero saber, estuve estudiando el Bhagavad-gītā
I was reading Bhagavad-gītā,
y hay una frase que me parece muy interesante de entender
there is one phrase that I think is very valuable
para mí.
for me.
Dice, piensa que no hay nada mejor y no habrá desconciertos en medio de las mayores dificultades. Nada mejor y no habrá desconciertos en medio de la mayor o de las mayores
Do
dificultades.
you think that there will be no problems even in the worst of the situations?
Si estoy en el estado de conciencia espiritual.
If I'm in the spiritual consciousness. That's it.
Well, because what is a problem?
How do you get into spiritual?
Is he saying that he's trying to understand this, or he finds it interesting?
¿Es interesante o tratas de entenderlo?
Trato de... ¿Se me puede explicar un poco?
But if you could explain about it.
Ah,
a little.
okay. What is a problem?
¿Qué es un problema?
There are three kinds of problems.
Hay tres tipos de problemas.
I had something and I lost it.
Tenía algo y lo perdí.
I want something and I don't have it.
Quiero algo, pero no lo tengo.
Or I don't want something
O
and I got it.
no quiero algo y lo tengo ahora.
Huh? Three kinds of problems.
Tres tipos de problemas.
All these problems are related to the body.
Todos estos problemas están relacionados con el cuerpo.
Isn't it?
¿O no?
Yeah. Or the mind.
O la mente.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Así que
these problems can exist